Hello everyone, I'm Bhikkhu Thitadhammo, and I would like to speak about this solitary war that survivors and descendants of people who have gone through genocides such as the Holocaust and all the other terrible atrocities throughout history have to fight. It is a solitary battle because there is not a whole lot of people that can really understand the pain that you have gone through because there is no frame of reference for most people. And this is why I think it's important to treat history not as a series of events or lists of names, but as individual stories of choices and emotions of normal people going through extraordinary suffering, both the victims but also the transgressors, because we must understand what drives a person to commit such acts of horror. And how does a victim walk away with such a burden of memory? Can the load even ever be lightened? By understanding the atrocities of the past in this way, maybe we can prevent these things from happening again. And this is becoming evident now when we look at the news all over the world that we need as many tools in our arsenal as possible. We nearly saw the most powerful nation on earth fall into the hands of fascists and white supremacists. And we see increases in hate crime and hate symbols because Nazism did not unfortunately die with Hitler. It's still a very real threat and it is gaining followers through the internet. Any student of history knows that it wasn't Hitler that invented this hateful ideology. It was around for hundreds of years in Europe, anti-Semitism. It's because stereotypes and false beliefs were integrated into a mythology that painted Jews as this dangerous other. This led to countless pogroms and inquisitions, mass murder that was justified through dehumanization. And this mythology is still alive today and is more widespread than ever. It is running rampant through social media and message boards through the spread of memes and conspiracies that disguise themselves as harmless humor and a cure for disaffected youth. I wish I had a better understanding about this matter and an answer to this disease of racism. But all I have is a very, very faint idea of what motivates people to fall into hatred and delusion, and an even fainter idea on how to be free of them. And this is mainly through meditation, not academic research. So forgive me if you do not find my case convincing or even relatable. I will describe a meeting with a victim of another genocide on the other side of the world, through whom I gained a measure of faith in the idea that we can recover from the trauma of genocide. In the summer of 2012, I met a truly extraordinary human being, a person who has seen so much pain and suffering, but still decided to show the world only kindness and compassion. She was a Buddhist nun by the name of Ajahn Bodhipala. I attended a meditation retreat run by her at Amaravati Monastery during a particularly tumultuous year of my life as a non-believer, looking for answers on the meaning of life. I did not obtain all the answers I needed, or even a quick fix, because it's not a quick fix. But what I did receive was the inspiration to be a kinder and more forgiving person. But most importantly, that cultivating these qualities is essential for peace and happiness. And also that this difficult task requires tremendous effort to accomplish. During our Dhamma talks, she talked quite candidly about her life, and it was no fairy tale. She was born in Cambodia and was in her 30s when the Khmer Rouge, led by the dictator Pol Pot, took over. This was a regime barbaric in its brutality, killing over 2 million Cambodians, including little toddlers, in order to create a perfect society. Part of this statistic was Venerable Bodhipala's family, including her loving husband. The couple had 2 children and worked for the American embassy in Phnom Penh, making them a target. The family managed to secure a way out of the coming genocide, but as Ajahn vividly described, they were on the last helicopter out of Phnom Penh as the Khmer Rouge was taking over, and there was no space for both the husband and wife and the two kids. She recalled how her husband told her to leave and find a better life for their kids, and stayed behind awaiting his fate. She recalls how she saw him standing there as she flew to safety. I can't imagine the terror and the sorrow that she must have felt in those last few glimpses of the love of her life as she flew away to safety. In the US, she faced life as a refugee, a single mother of two children on a foreign land, and she did this with grace and perseverance, obtaining a degree in engineering and worked hard to support her children. It was a will to survive and a promise made to her husband to stay strong that kept her going and kept the inner demons at bay. But once her work was done, once her children were educated and their future was secure, these demons, they came back. They came back with a violent fervor, crushing her with indescribable pain, a pain she could not bear, the loss, the injustice that was done to her family and her people. She found her way to Buddhism and meditation that helped her cope and eventually led her to find within her heart the strength to forgive her murderers, her husband's murderers. And she even described how she went to meet the general who was the main character behind this tragedy. And even after she became a nun, she described deep bouts of depression, but she endured and she persevered and she found victory in freedom. At the time, I could not understand how forgiveness at this level could even be possible because my own family had suffered under a brutal regime that tortured and murdered with impunity in Sri Lanka in 1989. The very history of my people is shaped by genocidal actions of the British Empire when they killed every male over the age of 12 in the eastern part of my country following a rebellion in order to destroy our spirit, and it worked. But this was nearly 200 years ago, but the impact is still felt in my nation. In this defeated outlook that my people have, in the ethnic tensions that led to a brutal civil war, even in our tendency to hate ourselves, the color of our skin, and the inferiority complexes that some individuals have. This is not a unique experience, it is something that is shared in all parts of the British Empire, in Asia and Africa. And my entire childhood was shaped by fear and desire for vengeance. I had fantasies of killing those who killed my uncle and put a death warrant on my father's head. It was an environment filled with so much fear and hate, and it does not lead to peace. And naturally, my life was one of turmoil and conflict. This was a manifestation of intergenerational trauma that many societies which have suffered from war and tyranny can relate to. The fact that hate only creates more hate is evident when looking back at my own life and thinking of the courage that Venerable Bodhipala had in forgiving her enemy, and the courage that Lord Buddha had in forgiving King Vidudaba, who committed genocide against his own people, the Sakyans. I have seen Dachau and Auschwitz. The unimaginable cruelty needed for such clinically executed cruelty on an industrial scale is truly horrific, and we should persevere to prevent this from happening again. And the prevalence of anti-Semitism even in this day is terrifying. It is easy to think of those people as monsters, but the fact is they are humans just like us. Only as humans are capable of committing such cruelty. Nazis are not something alien or a freak accident of nature. They are humans who agreed that hate is good and people different from them are impure and subhuman. Every human being has the shadow of this evil within them. Though it is a raging tempest in some, it is only a faint spectre in most. Still, it is a festering wound through which parasites can invade our soul. Parasites like Hitler, like Pol Pot, like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, or the white supremacists who carried out colonization and slavery and lynchings, and all those kings and queens on their golden thrones with blood on their hands and rotting corpses by their feet. turning normal people into frothing beasts. All it takes is a lot of lies that exploit fear, greed, and insecurity. But most importantly, this delusion that we are different, that those people are different because they look different, because they act different, so that they are a threat to our ways, a burden on our land, even though in truth there is no such thing as our land or our ways. These are just ephemeral constructions of deranged minds. As a Buddhist, I believe that change must come from within, at the individual level, because society is a network of individuals and the environment. If we can transform ourselves into kind and empathetic people, some of those that are linked to us in our network will be infected by this seed of kindness. This is how I choose to make this world a better place, and it starts with honesty towards myself about the darkness within me and forgiveness towards the darkness within others. This does not mean we should be incautious or naive, but to be aware of the forces that drive evil and to excise them from oneself first and help others to be free from this burden of hate. If we ignore these nascent seeds of darkness within ourselves, demagogues and tyrants will find a way to make them bloom into atrocities, and history will be doomed to repeat itself. I will leave you with the sincerest and deepest hope that all of us here and everywhere can find within ourselves the strength of character needed to uncover and heal these little hairline cracks we all have in our basic human goodness. Thank you.
Mervyn, it's your turn. Unmute as well.
Thank you. I am Mervyn Barr, a humanist from Aberdeenshire. I've come into this quite late. I did a quick Google search and I found that the themes for Memorial Day were resistance, light in the darkness, and suggested two themes of resistance and justice. So I'll mention both those as I go through. As a humanist, humanists are non-religious, but we share the same values of many religions, especially belief in the value of respect, love and kindness towards our fellow humans, values that we believe are integral to the human psyche. And to be human is in essence to be humane. The humanist stance in everyday life is mainly to support human and civil rights, including the freedom to have and to practice a religion of choice, and also the freedom to live without any religion, all within democratic systems of government. On the theme of resistance, I'll give you an example from what I think is a quite unusual source. When I heard it, was well taken aback. A friend of mine who's now in his mid-90s living in London served in the British Army in Palestine in the mid-40s, between 45 and 47, when the State of Israel was founded. And he was posted on the beach, the Eastern Mediterranean beach, in what is now modern-day Israel. And his orders were to shoot anyone trying to get off the boats, which were full of refugees coming from Europe to sanctuary in Israel, as it is now. And he was on the beach. I don't know the exact detail of it, but he said he couldn't bring it in his heart to shoot anybody who was basically skeletally thin, carrying little bags of possessions and dressed in the poorest of clothing. So he failed his duty and he let these people go up the beach and find sanctuary wherever they could. So that level, his little bit of personal resistance no doubt saved many lives. And I thought it was a tremendous personal example, very courageous given what might have happened to him for disobeying orders. But on to the Holocaust itself. I first became aware of the Holocaust when I was about 13 in about 1965. A friend of mine lent me a book called Medical Block Buchenwald, a book that shocked me to the core and still does. It detailed the cruelties and atrocities that were inflicted by the Nazis in the name of medical research, a lot of it under the supervision of Dr. Mengele. Cruelties that were tantamount to systematic torture and murder. But where does it all start? Resistance, once it's underway, is absolutely commendable and necessary. But if we prevent these things, we have to be more proactive and try and nip them in the bud before they get underway. The Nazis came to power through a democratic process, and in doing so, they undermined the basis of that process and established a fascist state. As we gather today here, there is a rise in far-right big man politics across the whole of Western democracies. Authoritarian movements based on similar themes of overt racism based on colour, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, and covert colonialism all exist and thrive. An abolitionist, Wendell Phillips, once said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Power is forever stealing from the many to give to the few." But vigilance needs to be followed up by action. And as John F. Kennedy said in 1961, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And it's maybe worth reflecting on the irony of this today, given what is currently happening in the United States, and is what is really still an unfolding picture and is yet to conclude. As well as Medical Block Buchenwald, two of the other most important and influential books I have read are Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl and Night by Elie Wiesel, both Holocaust survivors. As people of the Jewish faith, both in their own ways, in the midst of desperate circumstances, pondered and anguished as to whether or not their God had abandoned them, much as Jesus Christ did before he died. Elie Wiesel had been sent to Buchenwald with his father, and who died there in the most horrific circumstances. With Eli in a filthy bunk within feet of his father as he died, and his father was crying out to him as he was dying, yet he was helpless to assist, even to hold his father as he died, else he would be murdered too. Elie Wiesel went on to rebuild his life, becoming a journalist, an author, then a university professor. He also made many long-term efforts to capture, or bring to justice rather, Nazis who had fled to various places in South America, North America, and wherever. And he had a lot of success in that. He became known as the Nazi hunter. Eventually, for various reasons, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and he and his wife then created the Elie Wiesel Foundation for Humanity. In 1999, he gave a speech at the White House where he spoke of the perils of indifference, saying that indifference and lack of action become allies of evil. He added, in a place where I came from, society was composed of three categories: killers, victims, and bystanders. His plea was, never be a bystander. Humanists urge the same to protect human and civil rights, especially in these days of fake news, alternative facts, and outright lies. For my part, societies worldwide must preserve, protect, and publicise the truth about the Holocaust, lest we forget the lessons that each new generation must be taught. At individual level, we can also take actions. For example, if you have religion, urge your church to act. As a citizen of the UK, use your vote wisely. As an individual, become a sponsor, or an advocate, or a supporter, or maybe even an activist. Whatever you do, please don't just stand and watch. Thank you.